How does a Muslim know that he or she or their loved one possibly has sihr? Take on the responsibility, but first and foremost, arm yourself. Not with the Second Amendment. Arm yourself by turning to Allah, protecting your prayers, doing the adhkar, reading Quran yourself. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome back to part 2. And now we're going to jump straight into, we did a good amount of theory. Now I wanted to jump to practicality. And I guess let's begin this part with a very frank and blunt question. How does a Muslim know that he or she or their loved one possibly has sihr? What are the main telltale symptoms? Because we both agree that the majority of cases that people think they're sihr are not sihr. Everybody says this, everybody knows it. So now let's get to the nitty-gritty. Give us some litmus tests that the average person who's in doubt, do I have sihr or not? Is there a jinn? I have something to supernatural or not? What are some of the litmus tests that we recommend, or you recommend to our viewers to do, figure out whether they have supernatural issues or not?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I wish this was easy, that we had a comprehensive list of check marks to say, if you have condition A, B, and C, you are bewitched. And part of the things that we go through as ruqas when we are reciting verses, at times we are sure, to some extent, as I said, there's no 100% surety, because this is all ilm al-ghayb. But when we see the reaction to certain verses, we conclude that this seems to be the case of sihr. But can we be absolutely sure that this is sihr and the magic was done in this way? I don't think it is wisdom in our part to claim to know the unseen in any way or form. So, but we can say from the tajruba that, or general consensus of ruqas, that certain symptoms that are found or certain reactions to certain verses can conclude to that this person seems to be afflicted. So with that caveat, I will enter and say the symptoms of the person are going to be different based on the type of the magic that was done to them. For example, a person who is bewitched for a specific purpose, which is not to get married, will have failed marriage proposals, etc. So will have a very specific symptom which only that person can recognize, to say, look, every time I send a proposal, I don't have a real rationale to why I'm not able to progress. Similarly, a person can say, look, this is happening with my job. Although I'm very skilled, I have no reason for not to be successful. So there cannot be an application, a wider application, to say, well, if this, because this condition is specific to that person and the magic was caused for that particular reason. So there's a cause and effect situation here, that the magic was caused to do this and the person is being affected, so the symptoms would be in correspondence to that. So it cannot be that this is a symptom that will be applicable to all. So the magic is caused for a reason and the symptom would be in association with that. However, I want to separate the notion a little bit of magic and the possession. Not every spell will result into the possession, because it depends, as I said earlier, that the magician may be casting just spells, and there's a magician that is taking the help of the jinns to do this. If the magician is taking the help of the jinn, then the jinn may choose to enter into the body and cause possession, permanently, temporarily, be around you, what have you. That's a different scenario. To say that the person is bewitched is good enough now to say the person is under the spell. But the spell could be by itself, could be with the possession, could be without the possession. And the symptoms may differ accordingly as such. But one thing that is common, and I'm going to go with the most common symptoms, and is something that is practical, that anybody and everybody should be able to perform by themselves. Number one is listening to adhan. Listen to the adhan and perhaps maybe listen to it recursively, and or observe the person who when they listen to the azan, they feel the repulsion. They feel not wanting to listen to it. And the second is listening to the Quran, especially Surah Al-Baqarah or the verses of the magic, right? Verses of sihr, ayah, Surah Al-Baqarah 102, or ayat of Surah Yunus. There's so many recordings of Ruqyat al-Sihr. One can put it on themselves, recite those verses, or play it audibly, put the headphones on, make an intention that you'll be listening with the intention of Ruqya if you don't have them memorized. Listen to it and see how you feel. And if the person is feeling anything than normal, and there are two states. One is the state of khushu', when the person is able to understand the verses, and perhaps if the person starts crying because they understand the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they're not following. But other than that, if you see yourself behaving in a manner which is completely not normal, for example, your emotions are not in your control, you start crying, or you start feeling numb, or you start feeling very weird listening to this, these can be generally associated in that way that there's something not right. Right? Because this is not a normal symptom for the person to listen to the Quran and behave and react this way. And one can then conclude that there is an affliction. And the procedure, again, moving forward to this would be that you continue to listen to the ruqya until your symptoms subside.
Jay, before we get to the procedure, so you mentioned two litmus tests, adhan and listening to the Quran. Can I prod you a little bit more? You raised a very awkward reality, and that is a lot of times there are symptoms of the magic that seem natural, i.e. you're not getting a job, you're not getting married, you're not having children. For example, three of the most common magical spells in this case. The problem comes, the average Muslim might not be getting a job because it's a bad economy, because their resume isn't good. Or they're not getting married because of whatever reason, Or it could be a medical issue about not having children, for example, right? Before we even get to adhan and Quran, is there any other indication that, at least, maybe it's not 100% foolproof, but like some, qara'in that kind of sort of indicate that, well, I'm not getting a job and I really should think there's a supernatural cause, versus I'm not getting a job, maybe my resume isn't good enough?
No, thank you for bringing that up. I actually do ask that question. So some of the questionnaires that I make people fill out, I ask them on their medical diagnosis. Although I'm not a doctor, I don't pass any medical advices to anybody, but I want to know if there is any historical, any trauma, because if the person is feeling pain, and I say, well, because of sihr. I say, well, there must have been some incident that you can relate back to why this is stemming from, what's the root cause of it. But in general cases, or I should say that in performing your own diagnosis, you are not able to find a rationale to why this is happening. A person is well educated and perhaps was performing in that capacity earlier. They were very successful, but suddenly something has changed.
Exactly, point.
That is
sudden change. Yes.
So I usually, we're not getting into the case of Ain Hasad even, but I ask for what triggered it. What was the trigger point? I try to go back to the root cause of when did this start. And in some cases, people do have memory of it. People say, look, everything was right till here, and then
I met somebody.
Something happened.
Exactly.
Somebody gave me something.
Exactly.
I met somebody, or I found something. I visited a place. But I want to be very cautious. The Shaykh, this is again a problem, and I don't want to create a fitna in the community. We've got to be very careful. I'll give you an example. In a community, an imam came in with a person saying that so and so have caused sihr on me. So I asked the imam that just because a person A is telling you that the person B has caused sihr, are you going to take him out of your congregation and not allow him to the masjid? You need to have evidence of this.
Of course, yeah.
Majority of the times when people bring the case of sihr, that I visited somebody, it generally is in the realm of relatives, right? My so-and-so has done harm to me. It is majority of the times, I would say friends are even less. Majority of the times it is your some blood relative or in-laws in some capacity. I My guidance to the people who are listening to this, and I tell this to my patients also, that if this is buhtan, you have to be very careful. If you are saying that so and so did this, then you have to create the evidence for it. And if you cannot, then don't go into that. But they give you evidence, for example, so my in-law gave me this ta'weez. But you have to understand that the reason why we are doing this is because there's a lot of cultural aspects which people believe in, and they have nothing to do with the religion. For example, the mother-in-law took a ta'weez from some Maulana that came in and gave them that this is for your protection. And she got them by the dozen and gave it to all the children. And now the children have it. Now one of them got to know that this is wrong. This is not to be done. I don't think that makes the mother-in-law a magician.
Obviously not. Yeah.
She is a recipient of the wrong information, the wrong knowledge, and she passed it on. So we got to be very careful before we go there, and because this can cause a lot of tafarruqat in the family. And أعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا. And this is the fitna that we don't want to cause in the community. So I say to the people, look at the verse of the Quran. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to know, he had the knowledge who did it and what was it and how it was done. Labid bin Asim did it. It was caused by the knots. Do we have any narration? At least I haven't read one. Maybe if there is one, please educate me. That Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam going to the magician and confronting him, say, why did you do this to me? Or undo this. Because the Quran says very clearly, as-sihru inna Allah sayubtil. So when you say that, when you diagnose it, how do you treat it? The firm belief needs to be that it's not the magician who's going to undo this thing. It's Allah who's going to undo this. And you have to really go back and say, well, keep on asking. The narration that comes to us is the time frame that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was affected. Da'a wa thumma da'a. He used to make a lot of dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until it was revealed to him what was wrong with him. So the first thing in the matter of this, to seek cure, da'a wa thumma da'a. Make a lot of dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to show you what is wrong with you.
Jayyid. So you make a very, very important disclaimer, and that is suspicion of somebody's guilt should never become definitive without explicit evidence. However, if there is suspicion that is reasonable, can they not ask you that, this is what happened and we visited this, and maybe say, give the caveats, we don't know for certain, but all we know, after this visit, after he came, she came, after we ate this food, it all began.
If there is evidence, as I said, if they produce evidence, we know so-and-so causing us harm. And in this matter, my guidance that if it is a blood relative, somebody very close to you, give them da'wah. And tell them the example of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Give them da'wah. They're your close relatives, your father, mother. Sometimes anybody can be misguided.
True.
Give them da'wah, and if they continue to be on their path, then you keep your distance as to what the Sharia allows you.
You may take reasonable precautions without making any definitive claim.
Yes.
So what if I were to add to the symptoms that, of the symptoms, I would say, is the suddenness of an entire transformation beginning. Like, it doesn't make sense. You had a job, you had everything, and it just happens instantaneously, because sihr will take into effect immediately once it begins. And this is a symptom. It's not 100% definitive, but it is like you get, qara'in. Of the symptoms as well, I would add, and again, add or correct or give nuances here. Of the symptoms that it is sihr, is that it is not a diagnosable problem according to any type of mainstream natural causation. If you can diagnose it according to a natural cause, then by definition it cannot be sihr, because sihr is beyond the natural causes. So if they cannot have children and they go to the doctor and the doctor says, oh, the man has this particular disease, well known, or the woman has this particular issue, well known, we have to treat it. The fact that the doctors are saying this is well known, low sperm count, whatever it might be, that is, or something with the lady's, uterus, whatever it might be, it cannot be sihr, because it is a medical problem diagnosed by the doctors. What do you think about that?
No, I think, so for example, we may, in the cases of sihr, for example, I'll give you two cases. One case, they came in, the woman has pregnancy, And probably the 4th month or 6 months, fourth, I don't remember exactly, but around 4 weeks to 8 weeks, somewhere on that, she loses the baby.
Every time. Yes.
This happens 6 or 7 times.
Yes, very common to have the, yeah.
Now, according to the doctors, they say, we don't see anything wrong. We have done your CT, everything is normal with you. Why? We do not know. There is no causation to associate to say what is causing this phenomena to happen. But when I did the ruqya, and this is a very interesting case. This was around the COVID time frame. I couldn't call the patient home. It was very, I said, okay, I don't generally do online, but I said, okay, this is a special circumstance, I will recite. So before doing the ruqya, I was giving da'wah to this woman.
She wasn't Muslim.
She was giving da'wah, and because just setting the background so that they understand, because a lot of people, they go for the ruqya thinking the raqi will heal, and I don't want that to happen, or any kind of reliance on that. I was just telling her that, no, this is how you should believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And she was, I know she was on the camera, and her husband was around the house somewhere. And the jinn manifested and started yelling at me, said, stop it. So at that moment, I realized that this is, the cause of this matter is completely different. It has nothing to do with the medicine.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. If it's diagnosable.
However, there is a sihr of marad. There is a specific sihr that is done to cause marad, to continuously make the person sick. Now, that is diagnosed. You go to the doctors and say, yes, you are suffering from whatever disease. So it can be diagnosed. But can you go back and say, what caused it? That is where the issue comes in. It's like, what is the root cause of this sickness? Who caused it? How did it happen? You have cases that we visit in ICUs, people are suffering from different sicknesses, very weird. Or sometimes one of the things that we see in this matter is continuous sickness. One thing after the other, one thing after the other. The person is continuously going through, but is it the environment? Is it something that you say, well, the person was exposed to because of which they were caused? You're not able to, again, associate the cause to say, well, yeah, this person was working in an environment because of which he's suffering through this disease or sickness. But then that leads you to believe that this is not normal for somebody to go through these sicknesses without a reason or a rhyme. Like if somebody has cancer and they were exposed to some materials, some environment, and say, well, there's a reason to believe that they were in this environment and they're suffering through this issue. But when there is nothing as such, and out of the sudden things happen, I'm not saying every case, and that's why I said, Shaykh, it is not one symptom that you can give to somebody and say, because if you have this, you are mashoor.
Yeah, but we're giving indications.
We're giving indications, and in general, as I say, if you are under the spell, you will have reaction to the verses of sihr. In general, that can be. Generally, I think that multiple ruqas would agree that if a person is under the spell, they will have reaction to the verses of sihr.
Okay. How about one other symptom that I have found very common, and that is bizarre dreams?
It is a common one. However, I have to say this. So I do ask this question in my diagnosis form, that what type of dreams do you have? The answer is majority of the times, yes, people will have recurring dreams. Majority.
Recurring nightmares.
Not always nightmares, but repetitive dreams of certain type. You could say nightmare is one of the categories. For example, somebody being fed something, right? Or as you said, categories of nightmares, being chased, being, other things like that. But oftentimes people, it cannot be definitive in the sense when I see some people check mark every box and say, I have all of these symptoms, but it's wahm, right? There's no treatment of that. And sometimes it is people, you ask them the question of, do you have any dreams? They'll say, I don't remember. There is a loss of memory in that. They would not be able to remember even the dream from yesterday. But as soon as you do the ruqyah, it's like the floodgates have opened up. They would start recalling that I've been having these dreams for 10, 15 years. Or I had these dreams but I forgot about them. So there is not a very reliable per se that if you are having dreams, then it must be this. But if you have something that is repeatedly going on, especially as you said, nightmares that you're having repeatedly, those are not normal. They have to be investigated. And the other thing I want to point out also is that the sickness, especially the sihr, is it possible for somebody to be afflicted simultaneously with sihr with ayn and hasad, let's say? Yes, it is possible. Just imagine, yani, that somebody has to be having some sort of jealousy with you in order to cause you sihr, right? So it can be hasad with sihr, right? So it's not necessarily that you say, okay, this is the bucket of sihr and these are the symptoms for it. Sometimes we do the ruqya and we find that, all right, we see the reaction of this person to the verses of hasad. But as we are continuing to do the ruqya, we find out, well, there is the person is also reacting to the verses of sihr. So is it possible for the person to be afflicted with multiple spiritual sicknesses? The answer is yes. But given that the segment is for sihr, I'd say the easiest is you recite the verse of sihr. And if you do not know, just recite Falaq al-Nas. This was the ruqya of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Recite Surah al-Falaq 7 times, 3 times, 5 times, 7 times, just to the whatever that you can. And you blow it on the water, you drink it. Or you recite it on yourself and you blow it. And you see if it's making the difference for you, that you feel differently about it. And there's enough reason to believe that you are under the spell.
Jayyid. So one of the main mechanisms then of identifying sihr is the reaction to the adhan and the reaction to tilawah of the Quran.
Generally, any ibadah.
Yes.
Generally, ibadah. And to be very specific, to recite the verses of sihr.
The verses of sihr. And if you don't know them, then you can do Falaq al-Nas.
Ayatul Kursi, Fatiha, Ayatul Kursi, Falaq al-Nas, inshallah.
And one of the ways that I have, sometimes it works, not all the time, but sometimes it works, that the person, the parents might think, the child or the brother might think, the sister, whatever, that might have sihr, that what you do is you present them water upon which tilawah has been done. Fatiha, Ayatul Kursi, Falaq al-Nas multiple times. And you just do nafath, not actual spinning, but the nafath is done. But you don't need to tell them about that, right? It's just normal water, regular water. And I have found this multiple times, that when they drink it, immediately they spit it out, or they say, what did you give me? Why are you giving me bitter water, or something like this, right? And it's not 100% foolproof, but it has, like, it's happened multiple times where that indication is another litmus test.
Yeah, so there are 2 points that you raise, and there are sometimes people not wanting to get ruqya, or they think that there's nothing wrong with them as well. So in my experience, when people like that come in, so, parents come in, they think that there's something wrong with their relatives or the children or what have you, and they want to benefit them with ruqya. I tell them, look, you cannot force ruqya on somebody. It has to be something that you really have to have intention to receive it. But I asked this question to the Shaykh, that if somebody that is in need, but they do not want to take the action, how can we benefit them? So one of the methods that you mentioned is that you can recite on the ruqya on the water and have it ready. Let's say if it is the same household, everybody can drink it. And there's no harm, inshallah, in the ruqya. There's only benefit. So everybody in the household can drink it and they can be part of it and benefit from it, inshallah.
Excellent. So then these are some of the symptoms. But you would agree with me that it is possible that you do all of this and you don't see anything, and yet still there is sihr.
There is a possibility, yes.
How then, in that case, do you eliminate that possibility?
The solution to that is really to be consistent. Yani, the idea that people have of ruqya in many cases, that we're going to go and have one session or recite it once and khalas, it's that red button and things are going to pop out and everything will be done. Yeah. We need to again go back to the lessons from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The rough time frame he was afflicted was around the duration of 6 months or so. The time of shifa is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and what he did during that time was da'wah, and the time of shifa was written. So the definition I give to the people is, the definition of shifa, when they expect that, look, they ask the question, for example, before going to the raqi, how many sessions is it going to take? If I only had the idea, I would tell them 3.5 or 4. So the idea, or in my practice, Shaykh, I try to educate them to say how you perform your own ruqya. In some cases, the first session, I will be able to identify that this seems to be the issue, and I will prescribe to them that this is the ruqya that you need to recite and listen to or perform certain actions, like for example, reciting on olive oil and applying or drinking certain things, recited water and things like that, or ruqyabat. But in some cases, the first session is not sufficient, that we have to recite. But the last thing we want to do here is we make people dependent on people. Right? I think the fundamental of the problem out there where people are looking for ruqya is because number one, they do not know how to perform it. Second, the idea that if we do ruqya, or the fear of if we do ruqya, some harm is going to come to us, because I don't know where this is stemming from, that maybe I'm going to get attacked or something will happen to me. So they refrain from it, and they're looking for somebody to do it for them.
But isn't that true though? I.e., isn't it possible that opening the door to ruqya when you are not aware and qualified will potentially backlash?
I would say, number one, I want to distinguish into that. So you're not wrong, but I would classify that before you go into the public realm. If you are doing your own ruqya, you're the best raqi.
No, yeah, I meant on somebody else. Because if you're doing your own ruqya, then generally you are. Yeah.
So, for example, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sick, Aisha radiallahu anha recited on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's all permissible within the family, and it's okay. But before you open, you're interested in ruqya, before you open the public door, I would say then you need to really do a self-check and examination there. Are you well protected? And maybe we can do a separate session on that, but because it requires a lot of changes and commitment and your habits and everything else, because you're entering into a realm which is a lot of unknowns, and especially it's a kind of a battle which you don't know what you're going to get, right? I would say that you're right, where before you enter into that realm, you have to have your own protections. You are firm on your iman, your azkar, your salah, and everything that happens, you are going to take it as qadar and qada from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're firm on it. But if you find yourself weak over there, I would say don't enter until you are absolutely sure. But as it comes to doing your own ruqya, you should be, right? And the people who say that, look, we don't have knowledge of the Quran, say, well, Surah Fatiha was ruqya.
Yeah.
Min al-Quran is every single verse of the Quran. Any part of the Quran that you know. Yeah. Majority of the people, even the new Muslims, I'd say, they understand Fatiha. Yeah. Alhamdulillah. So Falaq al-Nas. So it's not to make this domain complicated. It's really, really very simple. Raq al-Nafq. Recite and blow. That's it. You know Fatiha, you recite and blow on yourself. And all the topics that we have discussed earlier, the type of the jinn, the type of the magic, all of that.
It doesn't matter.
It really does not matter.
Exactly.
When Rasulullah was afflicted, he did not know who did it, how it was done, why it was done.
But he still did the ruqya. Exactly.
Just look at and seek assistance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Exactly.
The rest of the matters, perhaps the people who are interested and the people who want to distinguish from the practices of right and wrong, that is important to understand, that who I go to. Is this person doing the ruqya correctly? Or is this practice correct, or is this practice not correct? Because majority of us think that this practice is correct, and which has nothing to do with Islam at all.
So to summarize that before I move on, and I'll speak on behalf of you in this because I know you'll agree with me 110%. The family, the person that thinks that there's sihr in his or her life, or somebody in the family's life, they have this simplistic assumption, let me call up Shaykh Talha, Shaykh YQ, let me just go and get a 20-minute session, khalas, it'll be cured, right? And that doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Typically, ruqyas are going to take weeks, months, maybe even years. Yes, maybe, on the off chance it could be a one-off, but generally, it is a long, drawn-out process. And I am not even doing this, not even part-time. I have rarely do it, I try to avoid it. Our Ustad Talha is doing it full-time. If you were to try to schedule with Ustad Talha for a ruqya session, I think the first opening would probably be a few weeks from now, because he's packed to capacity. So people have to realize that because there's so many cases, and because other raqis really are not doing anything that you cannot do yourself. Yes, I agree. Going to a raqi is very good for multiple reasons. Number one, diagnosis. When Ustad Talha sees a case, 9 times out of 10, he'll be able to diagnose it much better than anybody else, or 99 times out of 100, much better than anybody else, because he has experience. And number two, the iman of the raqi does have an impact on the quality of ruqya. That is a fact. So when a muttaqi, a wali, when a righteous person reads Surah Al-Fatiha, it won't have the same efficiency as the one who doesn't have the taqwa. So it is useful to go to a raqi, but a raqi can only do so much. And in the end of the day, if your brother, your son, your daughter, your wife, if your family member is afflicted, nobody has the patience and the time and the love that you do to take care of your own relative. Nobody. And so what we're telling and suggesting, and that's the purpose of this lecture primarily, is to encourage and motivate you yourself to come closer to Allah and realize, okay, maybe Ustad Talha's Surah Fatiha is going to be at a higher level than yours, but your Surah Fatiha is still the speech of Allah. Your Surah Fatiha is still infinitely better than anything else, because it's not you, it is Allah's kalam that you're going to recite. So agreed, maybe somebody else's ruqya will be more powerful, but that somebody else does not have the time to come to your house 10 times a day. Whereas you, it's your son, your daughter, it's your relative, or maybe even you yourself. You have vested interest and you have the time and you have the energy. So just like with dua, don't subcontract out. Same with ruqya. You don't have to subcontract out. Take on the responsibility, but first and foremost, arm yourself. Not with the Second Amendment. Arm yourself by turning to Allah, protecting your prayers, doing the adhkar, reading Quran yourself. That's all you need to do. Arm yourself. And then once you have that, now you open up the door for ruqya, which now gives me to my next question to you. Let's give some really practical advice. Like literally, suppose, may Allah protect us all, suppose I'm the one that is needing the ruqya done and you're the one doing ruqya. Show the viewers what exactly is to be done. Suppose I'm the one that is going to be doing that, and what are you going to do? Give us 2 or 3 things about nafath, about recitation. Show the people so that we can explain to them what needs to be done in their houses.
So if it has come to the self-ruqya, let's say you're performing ruqya on yourself.
Okay.
First thing is the intention. You make an intention to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you're going to be reciting this with the intention of ruqya. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for shifa kamila ajila from any sickness, known, unknown, seen, unseen. You make a complete dua in that. There are 2 parts to this. So from the ruqya, there are du'as from the sunnah that we know. As you know, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would recite in Hassan and Hussein. And from the du'as, from the verses in the Quran, they are selective for the verses of Ayn, Hasad, al-Sihr. There are majmu'ah of that. I'm not going to go over in detail, but
you cannot go, but can you give us a reference that they can look up?
Very, very simply, a ruqya. Let's say ruqya can be done with Fatiha, reciting Fatiha 7 times.
7
Ayat
times
al-Kursi 7 times. Surah al-Falaq, al-Nas, and Ikhlas 7 times each.
So 777.
777, all of them.
How would that show us? Like what
you just recite as you're reciting, and you blow it on yourself, and on yourself, or you have water, a glass of water, let's say in front of you. You recite and you do a dry spittle. So for example, you have a glass of water in front of you, you say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Malik Yawmiddin. You do a dry spittle on it after every few words, or maybe at the completion of the surah.
So both are allowed, like after every Fatiha or after all 7 Fatihas, but you just continuously do the dry spit, the nafath.
Nafath on the water, and the water is recited upon.
Okay.
Now, there is no my recited water is not better than your recited water. And if somebody wants to benefit their family and the father knows how to recite ruqya, he can recite and give it to his entire family. There's no special water. The water is recited, and some people go and say, well, that Shaykh has barakah. And Allahu A'lam, you can have anybody recite, but can you be self-sufficient in this matter? The answer is yes, if you know Fatiha. And I think so. Part of the reason I wanted to do this with you is the solution to the problem is not to create more ruqas.
Exactly.
The solution to the problem is that everybody learns the right and the wrong,
exactly,
and they feel that empowered that this is the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Okay.
Right? The azkar, when falaq al-nas were revealed, his azkar ba'd al-salah included falaq al-nas. So this was the proactive mechanism of protecting himself from one salah to the other salah. Azkar al-sabah, from morning to evening and evening to morning. So, yani, if we are proactive, inshallah, that should cause the reduction. And also being vulnerable to the superstition out there.
Jayyid. So this is now with regards to reciting over the water. How about reciting Quran? You open up Surah Baqarah. An average Muslim is going to be, struggling. Is that a problem that they're not able to recite fluently? Is that going to impact? They're going to say, I don't know, I'm going to have to recite slowly. Is that an issue?
It's not an issue, Shaykh. The idea is not to burden the person with ما تيسر, whatever is easy for you. The entire Quran, من القرآن ما هو شفاء. So whatever you can recite from memory, recite it from memory. In fact, when I get the spectrum of the patients, some who are hufad, some who know the Quran memorized, some of them know by the tarjuma, and some of them just know a few verses. So instead of giving the entire, the similar treatment to everybody, we ask, do you know how to recite Quran? The person says yes. Then you give them the assignments accordingly. A person who is just reverted, let's say, and barely can recite Fatiha, you don't tell them to recite Surah Al-Baqarah. It's a burden.
No, the average Muslim can recite, but slowly.
The practicality of that is, I've seen this, the practicality of that, you give an assignment. Although sometimes I feel this is a case that requires Surah Al-Baqarah to be recited more regularly. But here is a case that the person does not even pray. So we have to go use the hikmah in this matter and say, forget the ruqya for a second. Just start establishing prayer first. Then after a week, you tell them, okay, now start reciting these surahs. To the point where you see somebody that comes in and says, Alhamdulillah, mahafal. For him, Surah Baqarah is 2 hours, maybe an hour and a half. And then you say, well, Surah Baqarah you go back to the hadiths of where Surah Baqarah is recited in the houses, where the shayateens cannot enter. You tell them, look, when was the last time you recited Surah Baqarah? Say, well, they recite perhaps maybe not with that intention. You give them an assignment. Every third day you have to do Surah Baqarah. So the assignment is slightly different. The answer to sihr is Surah Baqarah. We know that.
Yes.
Now, how we prescribe it depends upon the patient themselves. If a person finds it easy for them to do Surah Baqarah, fantastic. What I tell them, look, can you recite 5 pages a day? I say, yeah, 5 pages is good. I can do that. I say, okay. Recite 5 pages, listen to the rest. Aid, but do it. It's something better than not doing it.
Question, when they recite, should they put their hand somewhere?
No. If you're doing your own self-ruqyah, you recite and you blow on yours.
Okay, how about if somebody else does it?
It is not necessary. The touch is not necessary. In the case where it comes through the narration where the scorpion bite was, for example, you put the hand at the place where the affliction is, then you recite, or you can blow. It is both cases is permissible. There is nothing wrong. Of course, the gender issue is different.
Yeah, we're not talking about that. It's mahram, brother, sister, husband, wife.
So a touch is not necessary for that.
But is it preferable?
It is preferred.
It is preferred,
if you know there is an area of affliction. We're not talking about sihr in this case. Look, I know I have pain over here, and I want to recite ruqya. You recite ruqya and you blow at that spot. Khalas, there's no problem there.
Okay. So generally speaking, just reciting Quran directly or in the presence of the person, and if possible, if you're able to put your hand on for a while, or if it's a long time, you can do so. Now, one thing that I also recommend when when people come to me for this, is to actually listen to specific tilawat that I particularly appreciate and recommend, and you can also add to this list, that I say to them that in this case, if you can listen to it on a relatively not super loud, but like a nice voice, a nice loud voice, paying attention with hudur. Don't just put it in the background. Pay attention to that recitation, or even if you can put earphones on to the person and have them listen to it at a voice that's not going to make it uncomfortable, but it is definitely, it's not like a soft background. And in particular, I recommend Shaykh Sa'd al-Ghamdi's ruqya 1 hour long. I found this to be very effective. And he has another one for Ayn and Hasad. He has 2 1 hour long videos. One of them is for sihr, and one of them is for Ayn and Hasad. And in my own experiences, this has proven to be very beneficial. So what do you say about that?
I don't have any specific recommendation as long as the ruqya is from Sunnah, the
Quran, yeah.
Quran and Sunnah.
Okay.
Anybody that you find pleasant to listen to. My number one preference is going to be that you recite yourself.
Number one, definitely.
And you aid it with the audio. You cannot recite the whole Baqarah. You rather listen to it, you play it, and then you said very important, the hudur is important. People have come in and said, we've been doing ruqya for 10 years, 15 years, 13 years, and here's one session and they see something different happening to them. I said, well, you're listening to ruqya, driving, washing clothes.
Yeah.
This is a form of supplication to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah.
There needs to be a little bit of ghairah here, that you're paying attention at least to what you're asking for. So intention and hudur. I tell them, look, people who do it for hours and hours, again, this is again an issue where people get carried away with this, that you're spending so much time just doing the ruqya, stopping everything in their life. I think that's not practical. Again, you're asking for practical advice to the people. I say 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever that you give to this, give it with that utmost attention and focus.
Quality.
And quality or quantity is absolutely must. As you said, look, sometimes the ruqya, well, the guidance from my Shaykh in this matter is, we treat the patients not like on and off switches. We understand, we question, we query, why is it happening? What's happening? All of that from the Raqi's perspective, yes. We spend time in trying to understand and we customize the ruqya accordingly. But from the general person's perspective, doing ruqya with Surah Al-Fatiha, Ayat Al-Kursi, Falaq Al-Nas after every salah as a proactive mechanism. Look at Hisn al-Muslim. Very, very short, concise ruqyas and long ruqyas. Memorize one of them. Probably half of it you already have memorized, half the surahs you would have memorized. And if nothing comes to your mind, just Fatiha.
Exactly.
Surah Al-Falaq, good enough. Not you shouldn't say good enough. This is it. This is ruqya of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Recite, blow on yourself, recite on the water,
Blow
give it
on
to your
yourself.
children.
Demonstrate how.
You can see for the narration that comes out when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sick, Aisha radiallahu anha would recite and use the hands of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, blow on that and wipe his body. So you can wipe your body.
It's symbolic. There's no actual spit. It's symbolic, and then you just blow on your body. Okay.
So the ruqya can be done this way, and also certain additions and other methods, which is as you recite on water, the same can be recited in olive oil. It's a very, very beneficial technique that majority of the ruqas recommend in this. Because if you look at, there are 6 verses of shifa in the Quran. And the fundamental difference here is a guaranteed shifa, and then there is dawa. We're willing to take a lot of medicines, but not what is guaranteed. One of them is وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ. Second is with the honey. يخرج من بطونها مختلف ألوانه فيه شفاء للناس. So the consumption of these halal items, permissible items that Allah has mentioned in the Quran, they have some benefit to us. So reciting ruqya on honey, reciting ruqya on olive oil, reciting ruqya on water, and consuming, including black seed, all of this from the Sunnah, that we know that there is shifa being mentioned from the Quran and Sunnah. This is all the means of cure, inshallah, and can be used. Now, the permutations and combinations differ based on the practice and based on the affliction. So without getting into the intricacies of that, you simply saying, look, there is a hadith, there is shifa in black seed. Khalas, take it. Don't have to learn the whole thing, just take it with that intention.
So then let's move on to the next one. So to summarize then, you need to start a regimen in your own life or in the life of your loved one that is suffering from potential sihr. That is by extra dhikr, your own closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Immerse yourself in Quran as much as possible, you and listening to it. Now, what are some of the warning signs that you're going to the wrong raqi?
Yeah, bismillah. So before I get into that, I just want to say the regimen that we just mentioned, and instead of doing this, because we mentioned about people have this intention of doing the ruqya once. At least give yourself a 7-day regimen. Spend a week doing this. And one of the observations that I want to impart this advice is that people have benefit from the ruqya in the first 7 days, and they suddenly leave the goodness out. Keep parts of that in your life. So if you're doing, let's say, a regimen that you're following 3 times a day, after the 7 days, at least keep it once a day. Be on the proactive side. So that I would advise that. And if the people who find themselves to be afflicted, Sometimes the 7 days is not enough. Sometimes they have to repeat the same treatment for another week or 2 or 3 until Allah gives them shifa. But the people who do get taken advantage of, before we get into the second topic, is people who are in a rush for the cure. And there are people who are out there on 1-800 on the top of the list who will tell them, yep, we can help you. And this is where your second question is on what are the signs of
The weirdos, the bad guys.
That's the number one sign, the people who will guarantee you shifa. There are people like that. I had a call once, and I missed the call. It was after Jum'ah, and I called the person back up again and said, okay, how can I help? And he could not recognize who's calling him back. So I figured that this person went to Google and just top of the list, calling few, and he didn't know who was calling him back. So anyway, long story is that yeah, the way people are shopping for cure, there are people who are out there to give them what they're looking for.
Okay.
And majority,
quick, easy cure.
Quick, easy cure. But the vulnerable, the most vulnerable are, tell me, just get rid of this problem for me, and I'm willing to pay. There are cases that come to us in that category also that I'm willing to pay. It's like, the money doesn't solve the problem over here.
Yeah.
But when you tell them, look, we want you to do your own ruqyah. This is a regimen that we're giving you for a week, follow through, they fail on it.
Okay, so another warning sign of a wrong raqi.
So in the earlier session, I categorized the raqis into 4 buckets. Yeah. So it's easy to recognize practices that are not Islamic. People who are completely outside of the jurisprudence, who are not using Quran. Any Muslim, inshallah, should be able to recognize that this is not Quran and Sunnah. Where there is a gray area, as you said, there's a degree of grayness, is, I'll speak from experience without naming names over here. I ask, when the people come to me and said, I have gone to a raqi and he or she did my ruqyah, I asked them, how was the ruqyah done? And as soon as they tell me, this person asked for my mother's name, my date of birth, asked for something that belongs to me, that's a red flag. Or the person who is sitting overseas, way far somewhere, has been able to diagnose you with that you have exactly this problem.
And the problem is sometimes that diagnosis seems to be correct. That's what's terrifying.
So I can understand where it's coming from, because there's a complete, we can have multiple sessions on it. And it's because the people, the ruqas, so-called ruqas who are working with the jinn, obviously they're talking to your qareen, and it says the information can be passed over there. So there can be some truthfulness to it. And obviously that is what mesmerizes and captures the victim.
And the problem comes, in my own experience, as you said, these are 4 categories. Categories, especially category 2, there seems to be a group of righteous people in category 2.
They are.
That's the problem.
When the people like that come to me, I ask them this question. I said, look, just imagine you're a father, you have a daughter. Somebody knocks at your door and says, hey, give me the hand of your daughter, I will drop her to the school. Just using your common sense, would you not question, who are you? Yeah. Why should I trust you? Here, there is somebody who claims to work with a Muslim jinn. My only question to you is like, how do you know that is Muslim? He or she, even Iblis came as a well-wisher to Adam alayhi salam. Are we forgetting the history here? If a raqi says, look, I have a good Muslim jinn, I'm not saying you're not Muslim, but I'm saying, how do you trust?
Yeah.
It's complete. I told you the job offer, we talked about another raqi, that they will come to you as a well-wisher. They will come to you as to benefit you, not to harm you.
And sometimes even the righteous raqi is deceived. Exactly. So
a person under instead of you getting mesmerized, and this is where the common man will think this person has special knowledge.
Yeah.
Shaykh, I've been doing this for a very long time and I don't have any special knowledge. If I ask
but you got job offers, so somebody likes what you're doing.
So if you ask, my Shaykh also has mentioned about this, that people who claim to say, I can see the unseen, a red flag. How can you see the unseen when Allah has kept something hidden?
Exactly.
That is supposedly a special knowledge. That is lie.
So I want to say something here that almost 15 years ago, I gave a very detailed lecture, which is still online, about black magic. And back then, what you said about the four categories, I did not think and realize through. I said there's two categories. And I lumped 2, 3, and 4 into all like the evil people. So you either have purely good or you have purely evil, right? And that simplistic view was shattered in my experience over and over and over again since I gave that lecture. I met many raqis. We need to come back in another lecture and revisit why you said 4, because I think that number is also debatable. But definitely there's more than 3, maybe even more than 5, but there's different categories of raqis. And there are a group of raqis that are not fully in green safety zone, and they're definitely not in the red zone. They seem to be pious and righteous, but they're doing things that are really difficult to understand, except by what you have mentioned, that they have been deceived. Now, what bothers me, and I'm jumping the gun, and we're not going to solve this problem in this lecture, so maybe I shouldn't raise it, but I've already opened the door to this. What bothers me is these types of raqis seem to be living overall very righteous lives. By and large, they're not charging the people. They're very simple, humble zahid. And they seem to be diagnosing problem after problem. Like you said, I mean, I have dealt with cases where families come, I diagnose the problem, they're like, oh yeah, my chacha asked his sheikh and he said the exact same thing. Like, what the hell, how did that? And it's like this and that was diagnosed. And the only answer I have here, wallahu a'lam, I could be wrong in this, is that this is istidraj. The technical term, like basically the jinni is trying to do a long-term deceit of a righteous man, because we have the famous story of Abdul Qadir al-Jilani and others where shaitan attempted to deceive them by bit by bit by bit, and then Abdul Qadir al-Jilani said, I know you're shaitan. And shaitan said, how do you know? Because, so then, the story is famous there. So I don't know. I know that's a different topic altogether, but I just wanted to point out I made an error 15 years ago when I said anybody who asks you for your mother's name, automatically he is a sahir. I don't say that anymore. Excuse me. It is possible that they're in a different category than the one I'm comfortable to work with.
So the middle categories over here are the gray areas where some of these practices have been taken from the other traditions. So if you go to non-Islamic ruqya, and this is a different topic completely of the ruqya of the non-believers, we're not getting into that right now. But some of the practices, but if you look at, as I said, the basics is the same. Whether you go to a non-Muslim raqi, they'll ask you, what's your date of birth? What's your mother's name? And now you see the same practice being asked by a Muslim raqi. Like, where did you get this from?
Yeah.
The Rasulullah's tradition does not teach us this. The Sahaba's tradition does not teach us this. We don't need the name, your name.
Exactly.
If somebody comes and asks as an etiquette from the respective of raqi that I need you to perform ruqya and you have the knowledge, you're supposed to do ruqya on him. There's no need to know his name in any way.
Exactly.
The second, you mentioned about something, you touched on it. The misnomer on this is, if a raqi charges money, then there's something wrong with that. Actually, this is wrong, because people generally miscategorize that, look, a ruqya service should be completely free or charged. If somebody is charging money, then he is also put into the wrong bucket. The evidence of this is that the person who performed the ruqya on the scorpion bite, he took the reward as 2 rams.
Yes.
And from that ram, even Rasulullah ﷺ took a share. If this was not permissible, then Rasulullah ﷺ would not have taken, would have admonished that person that not to take the reward. So, but again, the reward, which is in alignment to the person's time and caliber and whatever they're spending, and there's an agreement before the service is delivered, it's all fair. But price gouging in any service is not right. So there is the condition, the thought that if a person charges money is wrong, or the person who does not charge money, his service is going to be better, or he would have more barakah. There's no evidence of that matter.
So without a doubt,
it's a personal choice of a raqi.
Exactly. Without a doubt, given the world we live in, it is not fair to assume that a raqi can give you his time and energy, without recompensing. And in fact, there are some people that I have actually almost forced them to quit their day jobs and to become raqis full time, because the community needs their services, even though they were not willing to do that. And I have emotionally blackmailed them by saying it is fard ayn, and we're not going to point any fingers at anybody, but like the reality is the community needs the services of people. They have 9 to 5 jobs, and if they're volunteering an hour a day, it's not enough for the community. And so it is the job of the community to say, hey, listen, you need to quit your job because we need you in this area. So without a doubt, I obviously fully agree with this, that it is a fard kifaya on the community to support, and people who are getting their services and understand the raqi also has to. So money in and of itself is not a sign of here or there.
It's not a disqualifier.
It's not even, it is what it is. Like some people will do it for free, good for them. And some evil people do it for free, So it doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything. Jayyid. Now, before we wind up, there's a few very key questions that need to be asked here. So we talked about the ruqya, self-ruqya, family ruqya, going to a raqi. Now, how important is it to find the actual symbolic, iconic, issue that caused the sihr, i.e., the object of sihr that was done, whether it's a talisman, whether it was a piece of paper, whether it was the hair. How important is it to find that actual object? Number one. Number two, how does one find that object? And number three, how does one dispose of that object? 3 separate questions.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So I will speak, again, this is an area of tajruba from different urqas. I'll speak from my tajruba. The sihr can be located within the body, number one. Or the sihr could be somewhere outside of the body. If the sihr is within the person's body, let's say, for example, the sihr is eaten or drinking, or there's a knot inside the body, then you know that you are in possession of that, let's say somewhere inside the body, which is causing the problem, and there are techniques to that. In other cases, there are sihr that was done far away.
Graveyard. Fish you mentioned, that's really terrifying.
Yeah,
a fish ate it and went to the ocean. You cannot find it.
How can you find it? In the case, so I go back.
I go scuba diving, but I don't find sihr down there. No.
But you will see some videos that they have.
Yeah, I have seen those videos actually. It's crazy.
People do that.
Yeah.
So, khair, if in the case, so I had a case, very interesting because you brought this topic. A newlywed got into a house, and the symptoms were that they're inside the house, they would get headaches. And they get outside of the house, they're normal.
No headache, yeah.
So, upon investigation, it was found that somebody, when the house was being constructed and the foundation, they put a ta'weez in there. So, now to find that, you have to destroy the house. So what do you do in that case? Either you change the house, or you look and undo the sihr or so. In the case of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we know that the location of the magic was identified. It was, neutralized, and alhamdulillah, khalas, he moved on from there, right? The ruqya was done and the effect was nullified. Now, if the magic is found to be within the person, then there are techniques to get rid of it. And I'll name a few, mention a few. For example, let's say if it is eaten magic, then what works is sina makki, that you make the sina drink. It's a laxative. You drink it until the whole thing that you have
Sana is an herb.
Sana is a herb.
Sana is an herb, and if you get it from Makkah or Medina,
or as long as it's sana, you can find it over here in any.
And if you cannot find Makkah, Medina, any sana.
Any sana. You recite, you make the ruqya water with the verses of Ayat al-Sihr and Fatiha, Ayat al-Kursi, Falaq al-Nas. You make the sana tea and you drink it, and inshallah, if there is anything that has been eaten as such, that would be expelled. Similarly, hijama is very, very effective. Now, some practitioners who are practicing hijama are also knowledgeable in the realm of ruqya. So they would know specific spots where to put the cup.
Okay.
Again, this is the matter of tajruba. Again, there's no right or wrong in this. Some times when I see a case, I ask them to go to the hijab practitioner and ask them to put the cup at these spots because I think you're going to benefit. But in general, yani, instead of going to that realm, say, just go to a practitioner who is knowledgeable, who has done hijama for some time, and he knows the right way of doing it, not to butcher you. Get the hijama done, you will find immense relief from it, inshallah, right? If it is within the body. So, and in fact, even the cases of possession also, it should be very, very helpful. Now, the second category of the sihr that has been put outside of the body, meaning it was, let's say, sprayed upon, as we spoke earlier on. It was hung, it was hidden, it is being buried, it's being put into the sea, river, whatever it is. Practically, it's not possible to get to it. Sometimes it is, and sometimes, yani, let's say if it is a sihr with the possession will tell you, look, this is where the magic is. They'll point you towards it, you can get it. Sometimes
the jinn itself tells you because it wants to exit.
It wants to get out.
Yeah. It
will assist you and you go and find it. You see ruqas in that practice. But to be very honest, in my practice, I haven't found that to be
common.
The common practice.
Jayyid. What if I were to say one thing that I found to be not common, but at least 40% of the time, 30-40% of the time when I've done it, it works. And that is, I tell the patient that make dua to Allah, especially during tahajjud. Make dua to Allah to show you the place of the sihr in a dream.
This is where I was getting to. The third is, and this is common with the practice of Rasulullah dua wa thumma dua, until it was revealed to him.
Yeah.
So this is a genuine and common. This is a right practice.
Yes.
That you ask Allah subhanahu wa taala to show you what's wrong with you, right? And I tell the patients to focus on not, because people jump on who did it. It's like, forget about who did it. You worry about what is wrong with you and ask for cure from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
So I just want to mention a story here because I just came to remember. Was it 7-8 years ago? I was doing ruqya on a couple. Marital issues, intimacy issues, standard, you know what happens and like that. And they didn't understand why. And they had visited India and then come back, and that's when it started, right? So I said, I mean, it's so obvious to me,
so
you know.
You went to the root cause and diagnosed it.
Exactly, like right after they visit India. So what was the issue at hand? And then, you know, the wife said, I feel that it is my mother-in-law. Now, by the way, it's very common to misunderstand mother-in-law, father-in-law dynamics.
More than 50% of my case go right to that point.
Yeah, so I said, okay, make dua to Allah to see. And then she said that even the son said, you know, my mother does dabble with these types of things. Even the son wasn't fully willing that. I said, make dua to Allah if you can see the source. She comes to me and the next session, I saw vividly her bedroom and her closet, and there was something in that I saw right there, and my heart said it's there. So I said to the son, take a trip to India just to go visit, and when she's not there, right, go exactly where your wife has seen in the dream, and then, you know, bring that back. SubhanAllah, he found that literally his wife saw in the dream. He found that exact, you know, location. The sihr was right there. So it happens like this.
It is a very genuine practice. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah. So then you can make dua to Allah.
To reveal to you if there is sihr, then to show you where the makan is sihr, and more importantly, to also undo the effect of it.
So we're getting there. So then the first question, well, actually we didn't answer the first question. How important or necessary is it? That was the first question.
I think if you find it, it makes things easier.
Exactly, but it is not essential.
It is not, it is, as I told you, a couple of examples that in some cases it's not practical.
Exactly.
So it's just the practicality of it is not there.
So to answer the question, it's important, but not necessary. If you find it, it's good. And if not, you can still solve it. Okay. Second, how do you find it? We said a number of ways. Either literally somebody tells you, some human being that is involved tells you, or the jinn tells you, and it is reasonable to believe the jinn, because again, the jinns are liars. But there are, like, if it's terrified, if it wants you to, a lot of times, and if it tells you a place that is generic, it's not telling you to go to the end of the world, for example, right? Or in this case, it's the house of my husband in India, which is reasonable for him to go on a trip, right? You can verify it physically, or you can ask Allah in a dream. Okay, so now we answer that question. Now, the next question then, khalas, we have it. We got the physical thing. It is tied up, it is this, it is that. What should the average person do to untie it? Is it dangerous for them to destroy it? Like what? So Bismillah, go ahead with this.
Depends upon what you find. The most common, so sometimes the sihr is done with objects and pins and needles. Sometimes it is with perishable items as well, like fish or dead animal or something. Sometimes it is just written on paper. Sometimes it is blood or najasa and everything.
Yes.
So it is, I would recommend that anybody who is undoing to at least have some surety that it's not touching them. So maybe wearing a glove or so is recommended. Then the easiest way is, let's say this is an amulet. So while you're opening the knots on it, every single knot needs to be undone. But as you're undoing the knots or the folds of the ta'weez, you keep on reciting Surah Al-Falaq.
Reciting and blowing, or
recite and blow.
Recite and blow. Recite and blow. It's continuous. Yeah.
And whatever that you find in that as you open, the contents of that ta'weez or the contents of that amulet as such, have the ruqya water prepared in a bowl, and you submerge that entire thing into it.
Oh wait, so then as you're reciting, you already have a bowl prepared.
You prepare a bowl of ruqya water, recite.
Okay, so you've already recited on that one. And so as you're reciting, you dispose of it in the bowl. You don't just throw it away.
You don't. There are practices that I've heard of that people just throw it like that and people burn it. All of that, I would say, should be the secondary step. Prior to, you need to dismantle it.
Yes.
So you dismantle it by opening it up, cutting the knots, undoing the whole thing, and putting that or submersing it under the water till the writings wipe off. And sometimes the writings would not go away because whatever material was used or so.
How about burning rather than putting in water?
After that you have submersed it, neutralized it essentially, then you can get rid of it. You can tear it apart, you can burn it, and the water that is left from the bowl, discarded in a place here generally where people don't walk.
Okay.
So somewhere in the corner somewhere.
Okay. So is it correct to say, the way I say this is that however you find the sihr packed up, logically unpack it. So if it is knots, then cut the knots, for example. If it is pins, then take the pins out. Like whatever packaging you find, it's clearly been packaged. Your job is to unpackage it. The exact opposite. And as you unpackage it, you will be reciting. This is where it's useful to have a raqi, because again you need, but if not, then you don't need one. You will be reciting specifically, if you can, the verses that have to do with that type of sihr, for example, right? Min sharri nafathati fil uqad, for example.
Yeah, in general, I would say just Surah Al-Falaq, inshallah. Or if they know the verses of sihr, then they can.
Inna Allah sayubtiluhu.
Sihr, inna Allah sayubtiluhu, if they know this much.
Exactly.
Say Bismillah and recite that.
Yeah.
Then there's slightly different types also, without getting too much into detail. Sometimes the sihr is done, which is engraved. So, for example, it is in a khatam. A khatam, people wearing rings.
A ring,
there is a ta'weez engraved behind it. Or there's a bracelet, there's a ta'weez on it. Or there is a lawh, they hang on the walls, there's ta'weez behind it, and it's all engraved. If you find something like that, then it needs to be hammered out.
Hammered.
It needs to be hammered till there's that entire amulet is sort of discarded in a way and not visible to you.
Okay.
But the metal can be repurposed. There's no issue with that.
Okay.
The metal can be repurposed again, as long as what was engraved on it has been destroyed.
And the reason why it is the most effective mechanism to battle sihr is that once that iconic symbol is destroyed, effectively the sihr is lifted instantaneously most of the time.
Bismillah. As-sihr min Allah sabit.
Yeah, so that's why it is useful to find. Otherwise, if it's not, then it'll just take much longer. And in the end, obviously, Allah is the one that is in charge. Jayyid. So as we're winding down, I want to ask you one question, and then I'm going to leave the floor for you for anything that I might not have asked that you think needs to be said. The last question we'll ask you, and by the way, listeners, Again, the purpose of this interview was to be practical, theoretical and practical, and the goal was those that are suffering from this, inshallah, you will benefit and be able to take this advice and apply it in your lives. In case we've left anything out, go ahead and put that in the comments below. And inshallah, Ustad Talha is a good friend of mine. Inshallah, he has agreed to maybe in a few weeks, if we're able to, or a few months, whenever, to come back and try to do another session where we do specifically, the questions that we didn't, because time is always limited. So the last question I want to leave you with is, we talked about sihr. That was the main purpose of our lecture, of our interview today. Obviously, there's other things besides sihr. There's ayn and hasad, and I'm giving a lecture on that, inshallah, which will also be uploaded. But very briefly, just the end user. Let's not get into theory right now. How does the end user, how does the lay person differentiate? Okay, they know there's something supernatural. How do they know if it is sihr versus ayn and hasad?
It's a very tough question.
Your pause already told me it's a tough question.
Because for the ruqas themselves, for us getting to the bottom of this question, we're not always certain.
Exactly.
I will be very honest with you.
Yeah.
When the patients come to us, what helps us in diagnosis? Let's put it this way. How do we diagnose, or how do I diagnose? It is important to understand the history of where the patient is coming from. When did the symptoms start? What type of dreams do they have? And if the occurrences are random, or they are sort of a couple of times a week or what have you, the frequencies of that. But that said, among the list of symptoms, what I have learned is that till today, and in fact one of the Raqis mentioned it very correctly, that it is not possible to collect all of the symptoms of ayn and hasad into one bucket. However, there is an ijma' on ruqa that some of the symptoms are common.
Okay.
Common, and can be said, look, generally people suffering through ayn and hasad, they will have these symptoms. Now,
let's hear them.
So, we're now changing subjects slightly on the ayn and hasad. So, for example, people who are suffering through ayn and hasad. But again, as I say this to you, from this list, one can also say, well, these are common symptoms found in the people of sihr as well.
Yeah.
So there's an overlap of some of these symptoms. And that's why I said that when you go to the Raqi, he may find multiple symptoms. But is it absolutely essential for you to get a proper diagnosis first before you treat yourself? Not necessary. If as long as you're benefiting from the ruqya, khalas, keep on doing your ruqya. You don't need to. But if the matter seems to be complicated, and where you see now you're doing your ruqya and you're not able to get to the bottom of it, the ruqas can come with their tajruba and perhaps give you from their advice to say specifically recite this ruqya or this verse and this many times and such. This is again from the tajruba. There's no guarantee. The guarantee is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for shifa. So in that realm, the dreams are a good indicator. The dreams are a good indicator of the type of affliction at times.
Would you like to share with us at least one difference or one?
Yeah, and the caveat, I am a student of knowledge in this area. I'm not an expert in interpreting dreams as such or so. But generally, for example, people who do not have a sound sleep, they get up in the middle of the night. And in this category, they would be just sweating. Right. Number two, conditions.
So which one is the sihr or
this can be associated to both, but ayn hasad, or this can be associated to possession as well.
But more is it ayn, or more is it sihr?
Let me get to the more part later, because it needs to be combined with a few others. So it's not just one symptom giveaway. We look at one and then keep on adding. For example, now this person is not having a sound sleep. The second is, you look at abnormal body temperatures. Somebody feeling very cold or very hot suddenly. And they start feeling, you're sitting among the people, you're the only one who says, turn on the fan. I feel suffocated, I feel hot. Or somebody always feeling cold, baruda in the body, right? All just cold and numbness in the hand, numbness in the leg. This is a common symptom of Ayn and Hasad. As the person is listening to the verses of Ayn and Hasad, Surah Al-Qalam, ayah number 51.
وَإِنْ يَكَادُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَيُزْلِقُونَكَ بِأَبْصَارِهِمْ لَمَّا سَمِعُوا الذِّكْرَ يَقُولُونَ.
You will see them afflicted, right? A person having lower back pain, a loss of hair, these are commonly known symptoms.
For Ayn.
For Ayn.
Yeah.
Lethargy, extreme amount, especially in the matters of salah. As soon, I had a patient, I know this because I've seen and observed this. As soon as he goes and says, Allahu Akbar, he'll take a yawn. Normally he's just sitting and nothing's wrong with him.
And that's Ayn usually.
A constant yawning. You'll see a lot of yawning, and then also in practicality, in practical life, lethargy. Just these people are not generally like that, or they were not like that before. They're very active, very productive, have the skills to perform, but you see a transformation.
So guys, careful. If you're lazy your whole life, don't blame Ayn, okay? If you've just been, if you've been lazy your whole life, no, this is like a sudden change where you are active and then for some reason you cannot understand.
So a practical example, I got a student, she said, I never had a B in my life, a straight A student. And the person said, I just don't feel like going to school anymore.
Instantaneously.
So I asked the question, did somebody abuse you? Did something happen that you just don't want to go to this institution anymore? Nothing, I just don't know why. But then you see the result of that, what happens is that these people are now depressed. Depression is another part of it. Again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not diagnosing depression, I'm saying what I observe. Because part of it, which is leading to that symptom, is they know they are capable of performing.
Yeah.
They have the skills.
And they've done it in the past,
good
maybe.
at this.
Exactly, yes.
But
A
now
sudden,
suddenly,
inexplicable change.
Just that not being able to execute on that, or not being able to produce or perform, that makes them feel that way. So there are extreme cases also in this bucket, but these are enough for a person to say, look, I was good at something. It's not to begin with like I never did it, now you blame on Ayn Hasad. The same goes with relationships, because it can affect any aspect of your life. For the sihr, my definition, I've seen many definitions in the more simplistic form, is that to influence the behavior of a person through his heart or mind. So for example, you look at the verse of the Quran, فَسَحَرُوا أَعْيُنَ النَّاسِ وَاسْتَرْهَبُوهُم. They bewitched the eyes. For what? تَخَيَّلُوا.
إِلَيْهِمْ سِحْرٌ أَنَّا تَسْعَى.
They started to imagine that this was real. So it is the imagination. So imagining something which is good for you while it is not good for you. Unable to make right decisions in your life. Doing everything right in your business, in your relationship and everything, you feel like stuck. It's like some other people did take the same decision, they were able to move forward. I'm doing everything the same way, but I'm not able to. Practically, it's not making sense to me that I did something wrong over here. All of these, especially in relationship as well, that you're trying to do everything right, but the relationships are not moving forward. Could be said in any category. As I said, they cannot be just, okay, this is sihr and that is not sihr. But one thing I don't do is that I'm not quick to call judgment on this is sihr or this is Ayn. Unless absolutely there are so many symptoms, even regardless of the number of symptoms that I say that, look, I need to recite on you. And once there is a confirmation that the symptoms are matching the reactions to the verses, then I tell the patient that your symptoms are corresponding to somebody that would be under the spell.
Exactly.
Because for me, it is not appropriate, even as a practitioner, to comment with confirmation that you are bewitched.
Until the verses themselves clearly
even
give you...
Shaykh Yasir, because you have to be careful that how can you, that because this is the entire realm is unseen. For me to say you are bewitched,
versus you have Ayn.
Even Ayn or Hasad Sihr, the precaution that I take is that I look and say, look, from my experience, the verses that you're reacting to and the conditions that you're describing match to a person who would be afflicted with this.
So you give a preliminary precautionary analysis, definitively
there's no way, Shaykh.
Yeah,
There is no way to give with absolute certainty of anything that is in the realm of ilm al-ghayb, which is Allah knows alone.
Very true. SubhanAllah. Alhamdulillah. Jazakumullah khair, Ustad Talha, for spending so many hours with us. So to summarize and conclude, first and foremost, the reality of sihr, and of course ayn, but today's talk was maybe about sihr, is something not only the Quran and Sunnah come with, but frankly anybody who has been involved in this world, and Ustad Talha has definitely been involved, and I've dabbled in it as well, we have experienced with our own lives, our own lifestyles, with the repercussions on our families, which we didn't get into, but that's another reality that perhaps another time. But anytime you start doing it, things happen to your loved ones inexplicably. And you know why it's happening, but your loved ones don't know why it's happening. You know, that's why I've said this multiple times. That's why one of the main reasons I stopped doing is like, I can't deal with, attacks on the family. May Allah protect Ustad Talha and his family. But the repercussions that began are so clear that nobody who is involved with that world can ever deny it. Only those that are outside of it can deny it. So it is a reality. We affirm it. The Quran affirms it, and human experience affirms it. However, we also are very clear that this reality has been compounded with myth and mystery and folklore and culture. And unfortunately, all too often, people assume that the problems of their lives are supernatural in nature, whereas majority of the times, and I know Ustad Talha agrees with me, he's spoken about this many times, I would say 9 times out of 10, when the average person, uncle, auntie thinks it's, I have sihr, I have nazar, I would say 90% of the time, that this is an exaggeration, it's something coming from them.
If I was to take the preliminary symptoms and the storylines that people come with and just go with that, everybody is bewitched.
Exactly. So everybody thinks they're bewitched. Okay, exactly.
Or everybody thinks that somebody else gave them ayn.
Yeah.
Well, if you understand the reality of ayn hasad, even that you're capable of giving yourself ayn.
Yes.
So
the majority of the times it's not actually there, but they are just blaming it on this. And that's why some people have even denied it, because when, and there are many educated scholars who deny its reality because they're just sick and tired of people blaming everything. Oh, I'm lazy. No, actually it's ayn. You know what I'm saying? Like that, we talked about this. However, I firmly believe in it, and obviously Ustad Talha does as well. So our purpose in today's lecture was very simple, and that is to give you the basic understanding of this reality. The sahir is not an entity you should fear, not at all. The sahir is a servant, a'udhu billah, is a worshipper of the devil, a'udhu billah. The sahir you should pity, you should despise, you should make dua for them to be guided. They are not at all to be feared. Allah is to be feared. And the sihr will only be effective if Allah wills it. It is Allah who is in charge. So you protect yourself by your piety. The more pious you are, the more you will be protected. However, even the most pious person, you can get some ramifications, but as a rule, the more pious you are, the less sihr will harm you. However, the most pious person, the Prophet ﷺ, was maybe affected just the slightest bit by some effects. And that indicates no matter how pious you are, it is possible that some effects will come to you. If that happens, then analyze it, diagnose it. If you need to go to Raqi, if possible, go to Raqi. But going to Raqi is not at all necessary. You can do it yourself. In fact, you must do it yourself, because Raqis are not enough in the world for you to do them anyway. So get some courage, turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that courage, be pious, start your prayers regularly, make your adhkar, sit after Fajr and after Asr, sit and do the adhkar, or after Maghrib, sit and just do your adhkar for extra 10-20 minutes every single day. That's your number one fortification. Start praying tahajjud. If you or your loved one is suffering from sihr, tahajjud is the cure. Pray tahajjud so that you are fortified, and then start doing ruqya on yourself or your loved one. If you can read Surah Baqarah, excellent. If you cannot, whatever you can read, sit there and read. And also, along with reading, listen to the Quran. Listen to it. Again, I've recommended Sa'ad al-Ghamidi, but anybody that you have there, any person, listen to it with your earphones or listen to it in the household with attention. Don't just put it in the background. Listen with qalb, like paying attention, and with the intention of this recitation positively affecting you. And then if possible, if it is sihr, if you can figure out where the item is and you can demolish it, excellent. If not, then it's not the end of the world at all. You can continue to do ruqya. It might take longer, but ruqya will always benefit you. And in the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be the one. Inna Allah sayubtiluhu. Allah will be the one who will eliminate the sihr. You don't need anybody else. You need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Make dua to Allah, read Quran, pray tahajjud, do your adhkar, and this is the way to eliminate sihr. There is no other way to do it. Going to somebody, paying them some money, that's nothing. That's not going to eliminate the sihr. You have to do it yourself by continuously turning to Allah and eliminating the evil from your life. And inshallah, with this, I'd like to thank once again Ustad Talha for spending really the entire day. We had to go over some times and shoots here. But inshallah, listen, brothers and sisters, the goal was to benefit you. Leave your comments and leave questions that we haven't answered. We're going to inshallah compile those questions and then inshallah come back for a later lecture and go over them so that we all have the practical advice. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect all of us. May Allah azza wa jal keep our hearts pure. May Allah azza wa jal protect us from the evil of the shayateen, from the waswas, from the khannas. May Allah azza wa jal grant us all a righteous life and a good death and a resurrection in Jannah al-Firdaus. Allah jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.